Excuse me.
All right, welcome everyone. This is the 25th anniversary of the H.P. Lovecraft Film Festival. And normally we would have a gala of guests to bring to you. And one of those guests likely would have been the King in Yellow himself, Joe Pulver. Unfortunately, we lost Joe earlier this year as he passed away. And so we've gathered some of his closer friends and collaborators here to just kind of share memories and pay tribute to Joe. I think he would have loved this. He was a regular participant of the Lovecraft Easing Chat and would talk for hours and hours with anyone who would indulge him and refill his teacup. But I just want to thank Kat Pulver, his wife, and Matt Carpenter, Mike Griffin, Kelly Young, and SP Miskowski for being here with us today. It's going to be real informal. Keeping an eye on the Discord, so if you guys want to make comments or share your stories, I'll try to relate them as they fit in here. But I'm just going to open it up to you guys to go ahead and share some stories about Joe. I think that I'm going to ask Mike to share first, because I think you kind of met him that first year that he came to be a guest. I think that was 2013.
Yeah, I think Joe had been a guest actually one time before I met him. I think he might have been a guest a gap of years before.
You're right.
Stayed at the Banfield
before we started running.
Right, and then when it started again, and he was a guest again, then we were Facebook friends, and he was coming to this, and we made a deal that he would stay at our house. So we picked him up and he was our guest, and we showed him around and took him to Walmart, and he had all these crazy things, American things he wanted to buy while he was here, underwear and trail mix and all kinds of insane things. And he was pretty excited about all that stuff. So that was my introduction to this guy who had been an internet friend for a long time, an important internet friend. But as you guys probably know, sometimes you meet a person in real life and you don't have quite the bond with them in person, or they don't in person seem like the person that they seemed like from a distance. But Joe was exactly who I had guessed he would be. How his personality was exactly what you would expect from knowing him online. Crazy and loud and lots of exclamation points, and just always fun and out of control, and a sweet guy. And so Lovecraft Film Festival was a big part of us getting to know him in a different way and getting to know him better. I think he stayed with us for a whole week before and during and after the festival, and that was a great trip and a great visit. We took him to the beach afterward, and so that's my story, I guess, about Joe and the festival. That wasn't the only one that he came to, but was that first one where it was a big long stay at our house and trips everywhere and the Walmart.
I have a memory of him bitching about the peanut butter in Germany.
There was a long list of foods that he complained Germany, for all its strengths, lacked good salsa and good, like, a lot of things, hot sauce, all kinds of stuff.
Franks.
Yeah, you would think Germany would have sausages. For a sausage loving person, Germany would be okay, but Joe didn't think that.
Yeah, we're not so good with the spicy stuff. Trust me, I remember the Walmart drives, and oh my God, it's Frank's.
Yeah, simple things got him pretty excited about Walmart.
Yeah.
So I met him on that first time he was there. So I think that was closer to 2010, maybe.
Somewhere around that.
And I was publishing a magazine called Planet Lovecraft, and I had a King in Yellow comic book in there, and I kind of showed it to him, wondering what he would think, and he gave me his blessings in the form of, "I don't see anything wrong with this." And that was the beginning of a quick friendship. I remember that night, and Kat, I've told you this, that he and I went outside. He was smoking, if you can believe it or not, needed to take a smoke break, and had me The guy's blind as a bat. He's got me texting on his phone to Kat. I didn't know him or Kat at all, really. And I'm texting sweet nothings to her on his phone. And it turned out to be Kat I was doing that to.
In that case, that must have been 2009.
9, okay.
Full disclosure, we had met via MySpace, harmlessly enough, and things more or less unwillingly to both of us exploded in a direction both of us hadn't seen coming. And 2009, when he also did a reading for Blood Will Have a Season, was the festival I met him through, or the first time I saw him on a festival via several pictures and live streams. And I was shocked, to be honest, receiving messages that were spelled correctly. I would have known something was off. Each and every one of you who texted with him or sent me, you know his misspellings.
Yeah.
There is no denying. You have to speak Pulver to read them. And I know it was in the middle of the night for me. It's like, okay, he's really taking his time to actually think before he's typing. Holy crap. If I had known I was flirting with Kelly, dear Lord.
We've all flirted with Kelly, that's for sure.
It's really a rite of passage at the film festival.
Well, Joe would always say he didn't spell wrong, he just typed wrong.
Really? Okay. Oh.
How about you, Matthew? When did you first meet Joe?
I first met Joe personally in 2013 at Necronomicon. And this is a story I want to share. And I don't know if I'm going to tell it very well, but like you think of Joe as a passionate about literature, passionate about his hobbies, passionate about his writing. And you have these entertaining interactions with friends, but to try and kind of understand a different aspect of him, if I misspeak this, but there's a girl, she was no more than 17, 16 maybe. She clearly had a form of Asperger's, and she was like not respecting personal space, and she loved the field of weird literature, and she was going up to everybody so enthusiastically. And he actually, I was there in the dealer's room, he was sort of protecting her. If he thought someone was giving her a hard time or not treating her properly, it's like he took her under his wing a little bit. It was like this was someone completely unknown to him. And he just didn't want, he was the one, I think in 2015, if I'm going to get this right, he was the one who, or no, it was at the film festival in 2016 in San Pedro. He read the no harassment policy to the crowd before the festival started. You know, that this is a safe place for everybody and no one is to be abused and it won't be tolerated. But that just wasn't him reading that policy in 2016. He was living it in 2013. For an enthusiastic fan, that always just stayed with me so deeply when I saw him do that, regardless of, you know, him being funny on the e-zine or whatever. That's one of the things that's the most striking to me in my memory.
He was very protective of people he knew and loved, and he was very loyal to them. And like, he was such a kind person.
Yeah, and absolutely the kind of teddy bear I learned him to be, especially when there was anyone who was vulnerable in any sort of way. And I very vividly remember that young lady. And I know he pointed her out to me. It's like, when you see her, just have an eye on her. If anything is weird, she had trouble understanding that people could be bad. She was absolutely enthusiastic. She loved everything and she trusted everyone. And we had actually later that evening, we were in the lobby with Damien, Angelica Waters, and a couple of other folks, and just pulled her in and started talking to to her and see what was going on, because Joe had made it very clear that, keep an eye on her or else. Because she was out there by herself. And I'm sorry about the laughing part, because San Pedro, I'm getting messages on the side. And yes, Chris, that was the mermaid thing. He in private had often joked about Judge Joe and how he would deal with certain things, but I'm not going to mention here. And Cody had gone to that costume thing with him, and where they found the black robe, and Joe had found the hammer. And like a 5-year-old in a sweet shop, he was not going to part from the hammer at all, because Cody had just created Judge Joe, and oh my God, are we going to pay for that? So yes, he absolutely loved standing there. And trust me, if he would have had to use the hammer, he would have, with a mask and trying to run, but boy, he would have. And thank you, Cody, for putting up the Bloody Mermaid in 2016. Oh, that damn thing. Oh.
Do you see this hat? This was one of Joe's hats. And Kat sent it to me after Joe died. And now I wear it when I'm reading his fiction.
Aww.
I mean, I hear his voice when I'm wearing this hat and reading his books. So that's how I remember Joe.
That's really nice. That's really great, Matthew. It's like you're channeling a little bit of him.
And here I was trying not to use tissues tonight. Thanks, Doc.
Well, that's true. And the thing is, I've put on this hat and I'm reading his book. I don't feel any. I'm at that point, at that particular time, I'm not feeling lost. Do you know what I mean? I'm feeling like this is Joe. He's talking to me through his words.
You be careful. He spreads madness.
Okay, that's a good kind of madness.
You've been warned. That's all I'm saying.
How about you, SP? When did you meet Joe?
I think it was soon after my first novel was published. While other people were talking, I kept trying to remember who friended whom and how we met on Facebook. I'm still not sure. I don't know. But I suspect that he adopted me. I think he scooped me up. And I remember he was just very friendly, very kind and complimentary and encouraging. And then he sent me an email and said, do you Skype? And I said, yeah, I Skype. And he said, I'd like to chat with you about something. So we set up a meeting, and he said, he asked me if I liked Lovecraft, if I liked Lovecraftian fiction. And I said, I don't know that much about it. I haven't read that much of it. I've only read a little bit. And he said that he was working on an anthology, and he recommended a few stories, and he invited me to submit a story. And I thought, okay, well, that will be it. I read the stories. I found them fascinating. I wrote something for him, and he accepted it. And I thought, well, that's just great. That was really wonderful. But I didn't realize that he had adopted me, that I was one of the many, many people that he had taken under his wing. I started getting invitations to other anthologies, and I started getting invitations to be on podcasts, and people started asking me for interviews, and it took a little while But gradually I came to find out from, because he wouldn't say it, but I came to find out gradually from various individuals, over the next few years, that Joe was just telling people, oh, you should contact SP Miskowski. She could write a story for that anthology. That would be great. You should talk to her. You should interview her. And I had no idea. I just knew every once in a while he would send me an email and say, can you Skype with me? I'd like to talk to you about something. And we'd have one of our little meetings, and our little meetings would end up being, an hour and a half of just chatting about writing and, the books we loved. And he would say something like, do you like The King in Yellow? And I'd say, what is that? And he would say, okay, you have to read Robert Chambers now. And I would, and it would be something great, and it would inspire me. And he just kept on inviting me to write stories for anthologies, and he kept on promoting me without asking, without making a big deal about it, without saying anything to me about it. And I really feel like I don't know if I would have any of these stories published. I don't think I would. Where would they come from? If he hadn't been there. He was an inspiration, and sort of like a guardian angel, just sort of contacting people and saying, try this person out, read this person's stories. And he was really great that way. And he didn't push, he didn't, demand things. He just had such faith. So I always wanted to do my best for him.
Oh, I'm just remembering how excited he was. Yes, he looked you up. He had read several of your stories, and you just, like Mike, like several other people he had picked out, just impressed him. And that's why he had a certain amount of people always around him. And as much as he sucked at promoting himself, boy, was he after promoting everyone else.
He was really
Not
great at it. And this is what I've realized, in subsequent years. I realized that he does this for people. He scoops people up. He sees talent that he admires, and he would just promote you. It's the kind of generosity that you hope for among colleagues, but at that level, it's really, it's very moving, and it's a sign of great generosity.
That was the thing. For him, editing was just playing around with his favorite topic. What he really loved about all the books he edited was giving you guys a chance to shine. Sometimes with a nice word, sometimes with a cookie, sometimes with a whip. See, Mike Griffin.
I never got the whip. I always got the cookie. So I think he was very, very good at reading people, at reading personalities and knowing what a writer needed. This person needs a little push. This person needs just some space and time. He would accommodate the writer's specific needs.
Right.
That's a great thing. That's a really great thing.
And with Mike, he knew exactly what Mike could do. And Mike was always a little bit shy about where he was going. And I know he got a very harsh and severe treatment, but I think paid out in the end.
Joe actually kind of put himself in my corner and kind of picked me up when I was just barely published. I mean, I only had a few things published when he sort of started to take an interest in what he had seen of mine, and maybe because we had become good friends, aside from the writing, just talking about other things, talking about a lot about music and stuff. I think he sort of just decided, there's this guy and he's got some promise as a writer, and I like what he's doing. So I'm sort of going to pick him up under my arm like a football and just carry him across the, into the end zone. He sort of just made it his mission to just sort of get me ahead and give me opportunities and tell other people that they should read what I'm doing, and really, really pushed me as far as putting out my first collection. When I still thought it was too soon to work on it, he really pushed me that it wasn't too soon and I needed to start on it. And he wanted me to think about who would write the introduction, who would do the cover art, and who were some of the publishers we would talk to. And he actually dragged me by the arm to some of these publishers and said, this writer, you should publish his collection, So yeah, he took mentoring to a kind of a whole different level, with being a coach and a supporter and a friend and a booster and all these things at once for me. And I, ended up dedicating that first collection to him, and giving it to him, giving him his copy with a dedication in it at the San Pedro Lovecraft Film Festival. And I hadn't told him in advance that it was going to be dedicated to him. So I said, here's your copy. Thanks for all your help and everything. And he just we were talking in a big group outside the theater, and he was smoking and just being a hot shot outside and stuff, talking to people. And he was just sort of browsing through it. And then he saw the dedication, and it just sort of jolted him, And I'd like to think that it meant something to him and made him proud, and to be appreciated for what he had done for somebody else, that he did a lot of stuff with no expectation of being noticed for it or thanked for it. He just boosted people all the time.
Yeah.
But I do think it kind of got to him to have that, to see that in writing somebody appreciated and recognized how much he had done for them.
Mike, what was his nickname for you?
For me?
Yeah.
He called me Superstar. And I think it was because right before that Lovecraft Festival, maybe it was the second one, I had a series of stories accepted in magazines. And I think Lovecraft E-Zine was one, but I think it was Apex Magazine and Black Static. And so Joe was sort of teasing me that he'd been doing this for 20 years and he never got published in Black Static. They rejected him all the time, and he never got published in Apex. They would never take his stories. So he started thinking I was hot stuff and teasing me a little bit because I was still pretty new at it. And he started calling me Superstar, which, it was sort of sweet, but it was kind of teasing. Obviously, I was not more established or successful as a writer than him. But he was just that way, teasing. But he meant it affectionately. He wasn't putting me down.
I think that's how we met, is through Joe.
Yeah.
Because we brought him out to the festival as a guest, and he emailed me and said, hey, I'm going to stay with my friend Mike Griffin. He's a writer, by the way. You should have him at your festival. And I was like, okay, because we were pretty new at that point to running the festival, and we kind of inherited a list of guests. And like that first year that we had put on the festival, just kind of emailed everyone saying, hey, we're the new organizers. If you'd like to be part of the festival, let us know. And like, not very many people reached out to us. But Joe was one of those people. And, we kept in touch with him. And when Brian and I were traveling one year, so we met up with Kat and Joe and took them out to lunch in Berlin, and that was a great day. It was really fun. He was surprised to see us. Like, what are you doing in Germany? We're like, well, we're going to a music festival, and thought we'd stop in and take you to lunch. But yeah, he definitely was one of those people that would every now and then tell me like, hey, this person has a thing coming out, you should have them reading at your festival. And I was grateful for those recommendations, because like I didn't know a lot of I didn't know who the writers were, and me being me at the time was felt very awkward about just emailing people I didn't know out of the blue and asking them to be a guest. And now I've learned that authors love to be asked to be guests. So it's not as hard, but he made it really easy in that way, because he was just kind of pushed people at me and wanted to give them a platform and wanted to give me, guests to have. So yeah, definitely was one of his superpowers, was connecting people that way.
Especially with the festival, he always referred to the HPLFF as his summer camp. getting away from his home and regular life at Walmart for a few days, meeting his people. And he always considered himself mostly an attendee that just happened to read on occasion. And he saw that from the point of the perspective of someone who visited the festival. And he had a pretty good idea what he wanted to see and what would be interesting. And mostly his references were pure selfish. He suggested the people he wanted to meet, pure and simple. See, Mike Davis. No, he just, mostly he just had, like with Mike Griffin. And I'm sure he told you this, Mike. Yes, you had barely been published. And yes, he had an idea there was talent in there. But you and Lena had done something that impressed the heck out of him as musicians. And he understands, like all of us that do the music and the writing thing as either fans or active participants. If you're good at one thing, there's a pretty damn good chance you have enough imagination to succeed at the other. And he just loved your music to death. And Lena, of course, the cello. Oh, God. And when he returned with your collection from the festival, he would usually, when he'd unpack his luggage, the first layer would be gifties, as I called them. Remember memories from the festival and little things he picked up for me and stuff like that. And this year, the first thing I saw was the collection. I was like, oh, cool, that's the new Griffin. Let's see what that is. And he literally stood there, was about to hand it to me, and didn't let go. Until he had opened it and showed me the dedication. And I was like, oh, that's cool. Can I read this? And he's like, I'll keep that for a while. I've never been able to read that copy. It's been stashed away. And then I'd marry him, front center. And he's like, don't touch it. It's mine. Oh, he was so damn proud. I know he was. We talked that night via Facebook Messenger, I think, which was rare enough. We usually chatted back and forth just to get his life signed. And he actually video called me and held the damn thing up. He was so excited and he knew exactly how it was meant. And trust me, it worked.
That's good.
Not as a pride, but as a point of pride for him. Yeah, he was very happy.
I always Joe obviously had this great talent as a writer and a really unique talent. And also, obviously, as an editor, he probably even had more wide success with a wider audience as an editor. But I feel like it all sort of came from a place that he was a fan and an enthusiast. He just loved reading and he loved writers. And so part of maybe why he had so much success editing was that it grew out of putting pieces together, reading a lot of people, understanding what they can do and fitting them together in a way that makes sense and sort of introducing one person to another and, just facilitating that. And like what Gwen said about, oh, you should talk to Scott Nicolay. He has a book coming out. He should be at your festival, that kind of thing.
More than any editor I've ever worked with, Joe was interested in knowing what this writer would do with this theme. It wasn't that he wanted to have a themed anthology where everything fit perfectly together or where all of the stories fit one aesthetic. He was really interested in individual writers and what you would do with this subject or with this theme. He wanted a Mike Griffin story. He wanted he placed such emphasis on the individual writer's voice. And that's just a great thing to work with someone like that who really, really hears you, who really gets you.
Oh, that was one of the things that tickled him like crazy. Every time he approached one of you for an apology, anyone, and it's like, Chambers, I don't think I've heard of that one before. And he would be giddy like a little kid. It's like, oh my God, I can introduce someone to something new,
Mhm.
And B, it's like, I wonder what someone who's been new for the whole idea turns that into. That was the one thing that really, really excited him. You know, not enough a Chambers story, but you know, Miskowski doing Chambers, or Griffin looking at whatever. He loved challenging new people because you know there's enough anthologies out there that do the same old thing. That's why he grabbed you and shook you and occasionally would growl and do the happy dance when he was done Skyping, waking me up in the middle of the night. I knew if you guys had successfully talked because all at this point it's what? I wish I had eyesight. Oh, a couple of minutes past 3 a.m. here in dim Carcosa at this point. And when he would be done Skyping with you at all times, all of a sudden the next room would explode with music. It's like, shit, really? It's 5 a.m. It's still dark out there. And he's like, okay, no one has complained yet. No. But yeah, he would actively celebrate and he loved bringing people to different new places, exciting places, hopefully for all of you. Say something, Doc. You're the reader here.
You're muted.
Thank you. I was thinking, for as long as he was passionate about his hobbies, that's what they were. For example, there was the Calum Club that was famous, that Lovecraft was a member of it when he lived in New York. There was a modern version of the Calum Club, I think, run by Bob Price. And he would have people over to his house for like evening long pizza eating sessions, sharing stories, just laughing and having a good time. If you knew C.J. Henderson, who died about 5 years ago, he would, for example, they'd have it at C.J. Henderson's house, and his daughter Erica Henderson, when she was 6, he said, was bringing down her little drawings, and she's grown up to be a really remarkable artist. But he never wrote anything because he never thought he could. This is my understanding, that he could be part of that company. But then I don't know if it was Bob Price or a few others of them, just put it down on paper, man. So like his first publications, for as long as he was passionate in the field, only date to 1998. And there's his novel, but the story I remember is The Night Music of Oak Dean, which is a riff on Brian Lumley. And I was collecting the Rainfall books, chapbooks series. I'll tell you, they'll publish anybody, because for God's sakes, they published me. Like, okay, but and I'm reading through it. Usually this stuff is not of high quality, and I come across this, I don't recognize the name. And it's like, wow, that story blew me away. I had to read it again right away, and then again the next week. And it, at that point, if you read his later writing, which is almost like you're in the interior mind of the protagonist, you aren't reading, like when you think, are you thinking formed sentences? Is it thoughts, concepts, pictures, music mixed together, all kind of several things running on at once? Like, how disorganized is your thought process till the sentence comes out? That's how he wrote later, but in the beginning it was much more linear. And so if you want that kind of thing, you could read The Night Music of Oak Dean. And then he's starting to get, like, there's this story, There Will Be Blood. If you want to look up a fantastic Joe Pulver story, There Will Be Blood, about, you're in the mind of this protagonist driving across the country to deliver something he doesn't know what to someone he doesn't know who, and things aren't going to go well for him. And yet you understand him. He was in the guts of this guy. You understood why he was doing and what he was wanting, and all that he just wanted this one thing, to be out of his bad life and doing. And what I remember reading that is like, oh my gosh, it's like I can really empathize with this guy, and therefore what happened to him it was really scary, because it was like it was happening to you. But if that was his writing, the other part of his creativity, which is like almost volcanic, was his concepts for anthologies. I gotta say, this could have come. The Madness of Dr. Caligari is Shirley Jackson award-winning. No, yeah, Shirley Jackson award-winning anthology. It's brilliant. There's nothing like it out there. Fabulous group of authors, but it's the concept. You take an experimental movie from 1920 Germany, and if you want, here's what I suggest. You get this book, but first go on Amazon and stream the silent version of The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. And you, at that point, you realize how incredible the movie is, but then to actually get the idea that we could create stories based on these characters. I don't think the movie came out in 1920. You know, it's like, this is like 100 years later. Like, so this is just a few years ago, 95 years later. Is this the very first anthology based on this movie? Because no one would have come up with that concept before, just Joe. And no one would have had the pull to compile this author list. Nobody in the whole world except just Joe. This is just Joe. And if there's a legacy, and it's not, if fiction is one thing, this book that I think everybody desperately needs to read, this is Joe's legacy. It's like, if you want to kind of understand how his mind worked, just watch the movie, then think, who would think of creating such a book and bringing it to fruition in such a glorious fashion? There's nobody. That's just Joe.
Couple of amusing things about it. I believe it was nominated but didn't win.
Yeah, he won for the Grimm's Puppets.
Right, where Mike Griffin kindly decided to jump in and read a jumble text from his phone. Oh God, I still remember sitting there for the Shirley Jackson Award ceremony, and we were stalking Mike Griffin on Twitter. And he's like, oh, this one won and bad. And all of a sudden it's dead silent. It's like, what happened here?
Why isn't he saying who won this thing? Oh, it's because he's walking up there to read the speech. Yeah.
And I literally, probably when you got up and walked to the stage, I got up and walked over. It's like, have you seen anyone else saying something? And he's like, nope. And we were just looking at each other and it's like, no, this isn't happening. There's no way this is happening. And indeed, someone else tweeted and it's like, oh, I'm going to skip the rest. You know, I'm trying not to go to New York here. But Caligari, it's been on his mind forever. Hopefully each of you, whoever read and or accepted a story by Joe, remembers a certain Dr. Archer at some point. And we can all guess who that might have been based on. And the other thing is that in, oh God, what was it, 2015, the Necronomicon? He had suggested the collection to Fedosian and Bremer via email beforehand. And on Thursday, I think, him and Dennis met in person and talked about maybe how to come up with the anthology and payments and whatnot. And Joe said he was going to get most of the TOC until Sunday so he could sign the papers while still in Providence. And Dennis was pretty sure Joe was joking. He wasn't. By Friday night, half the TOC was filled. And by Saturday, he had gotten the rest of you guys. It was just, I don't know how many times I actually had to drag him out of a conversation with, you're on a panel. Yes, but I'm trying to get people to join for the Caligari anthology. Yeah, but you're on a panel in 10 minutes. And yes, by Sunday, they signed the contract. And that was just the way he worked. You know, you give him the go and yeah, you're welcome to pay at home. And boy, did he. I think he was doped up on several painkillers for at least a week, but well, worked out. All right, done.
he had so much, like the enthusiasm that I mentioned. When he would go to a convention, he would fly for 16 hours or something to get to the convention, and he wasn't, a young, energetic man. He was a middle-aged man, and you would think he would just be wiped out and would need to sleep when he arrived. But he would arrive and he would be so excited and so buzzing with wanting to talk about stuff and see people. And he would be like, I would need to go to bed, and I'd say, Joe, it's 2:30, man. You've been up for 30 hours. Let's go to sleep. And he would just still be going. And like Kat said, though, he probably, when he got home, then would pay the price and have to sleep for a week to make up for it.
Oh yeah, if there were conventions where Cody was around, Cody would do his magic and keep him pain-free and stable and going for a while. But yeah, I'm sorry?
I hate to think what that means with Cody.
I'm sorry, you're thinking along the right path, and trust me, it helps.
Oh, it's okay. It's legal here now.
Yeah, it's legal.
All right, because I remember the first time I was introduced to Cody were the words of, if someone who looks like a wild man who just came out from the woods and hides behind you and lit a funny looking cigarette, that's going to be Cody. And boy, would he do that for me. The one person that was legally reliable because she was from out of the US was the one he would abuse to light his joint behind because my back was the widest. Thanks, Cody. No, but that stuff really, really helped him to just shut down the pain and just go. And it's still not legal here. We started, 3 years ago with being able to actually buy CBD, which has been magic for him. But yeah, being absolutely running on enthusiasm and sometimes other things. And he just literally drop his luggage, eat something, give me a hug. And the second I turned around, we sprawled out on the bed. It's like, see you in 3 days.
I had the pleasure of not only publishing Joe a number of times in Strange Eons, but collaborating on one story with him. And he had written segments. I had written segments. If you've read Joe, you know that he has an unconventional way with exclamation points, commas, and the way that we lined everything up in the magazine was in columns. And he had 17 periods after this one thing, and it wasn't working with the column. And I said to him, because I knew it would be no problem, Joe, I'm going to break this down to 14 periods. And there must have been something going on that day, because I got an earful through the email about, don't you change a word of that, don't you change any of this stuff, and I'm tired of editors coming in and changing my stuff. And I was like, wow, Joe, what's going on here? Are you angry about this or something else going on? And we smoothed it over pretty quickly, but it was one of the few times that I remember he and I were a little angry at each other.
That was my fault.
Oh no, tell me.
Because it's just us girls and no one else is listening. I had been proofreading most of his things because it's easier for someone who doesn't speak the language as a native speaker to catch things. It's in the nature of the beast. Haha. And I had pointed something out that St. Joshi hadn't seen while he was copy editing. Because Joshi reads fast and quick, and he reads things that aren't there. And next time you open Blood Will Have Its Season at some point, look at the words quiet and quiet.
Uh-oh.
And due to Joe's happily mixing up letters thing, he would really, really focus on certain words because he knew where his weakness was. Most of the things are perfectly spelled, the difficult ones, and the easy ones are like, okay, what were you trying to tell me with that? And I had pointed out that quiet and quiet were always mixed into quiet, even when it was supposed to be quiet. And there's like at least half a dozen times where it's misspelled, where it shouldn't have been. And he wasn't happy. Oh God, he wasn't happy. And that's probably at around the same time, because I vividly remembered how he looked at me and remembered the don't kill the messenger thing, but only because it's the sweetie. Otherwise, I probably would have gotten the same earful you got. I'm sorry.
I took it out on me. And let's face it, if anyone needs to take blame for some stuff, it's Joshi. Come on.
I'm trying to be nice here, you know? I really am mostly kind of. Speaking of being nice, while everyone collects their thoughts, there's two things I'd like to say to kind of drown the mood, because that's who I am. No. um, and you guys can collect on what else you want to talk about. The one thing that I need to get off my chest is, even though I've been public on Facebook with the whole thing, to just publicly thank every single one of these crazy people that I dubbed the Yellow Army. When things started going downhill with Joe, people that I hadn't even known contacted me via Messenger, just with a few kind words or hang in there. There's, oh God, I hope I'm saying the last name right, Dwayne Passage. Is that the right way to say the last name? Who instantly took me under his wing when it came to COPD and oxygen and whatnot, and gave me a run through the most things. People caught me, see the mythos fox that's hanging out there. And when finally on April 24th, I had to spread the message and had to go to a mortuary on Monday and pay for whatever minute burial I would be able to afford, I posted on Facebook a couple of hours later. It's like, guys, you're not gonna believe this. It's been much less money than I feared, and I can keep the damn urn and I can bring him home. And at the end asked for money, maybe to help me cover half of the money I would need to get him a decent burial and a nice urn. Not even 12 hours later, it was more than covered. I received donations of $5 from people I didn't even know who they were. I received messages from people I had no clue that even knew Joe. The support, the love, the comfort has been, I don't even have words for that, amazing. And I've tried thanking people personally and on Facebook repeatedly, and I just had to thank everyone here again, because it's been crazy. Thanks, Chris. You've saved our butts, not just physically, not just financially, but emotionally as well. And the other thing, I don't care how healthy you are. I don't care how happy you are. I don't care how young you are. Take out 10 minutes and make a damn living will. It's saving everyone's life, because if you've seen me online between April 1st and 21st, it's hell. If you don't know what people would like you to do, just do it. Take out these 10 minutes. It's going to make everyone's else existence a whole lot easier. That being said, thanks to the Yellow Army, I'm going to shut up now, and I'm handing it to whoever to raise the volume and the happiness of the conversation again. I'm sorry.
Kat, we all hope to have the kind of love and support that you gave to Joe. We all hope to find that and to have that in our lives. Everyone needs a cat. You're just amazing. And yeah.
And Kat, tears.
Everyone has a Corey and a Lena, so you kids breathe, all right?
Tears aren't bad, Kat. Tears are good.
I know.
You know, it's why hold in the passion that you feel? you kind of have to hang on to the pain so you can keep the love.
Well, not only that, but with this whole bloody pandemic out there, did it help me to talk about this stuff? Yeah. Does it still do? Absolutely. Am I being checked in by certain people on a regular basis? Poked, it's like, you okay? Mm-hmm. All right. But I would like to think I'm also doing a small service to others by just showing exactly what you said. You need to talk about these things. You can't hold this in forever. And I'll be honest, most of Joe's family and friends are overseas. And there's a moment where I'm sitting here literally by myself. You know, there's my mom, there's a couple of friends, but none of them had been even half as close as most of the people I'm talking to on Facebook. And it hurts and it's no fun. And when you have folks out there that just help catch you. And I was overwhelmed by the feedback I got, and I still am by certain people. And it just, I've had, I don't want to name names, privacy things, but I've been contacted by several people who had lost folks who wanted to know things about epilepsy because they were scared shitless by what they had been reading. And it's like, no, that was him. That wasn't supposed to be you. We're good here. No, but I think it's important to talk about these things. Plus, it helps me get that stuff off my chest. I mean, most of you guys have seen the skeleton that has moved in here with the king in yellow get up. Yeah, that was it's these crazy little things, but everyone thinks, oh, you're nuts. No, it's not. It's helping, and it's amazing how many people got back to me. It's like, you know what? My wife used to do this and that, and I think yeah, that's a really nice way to remember that. So yeah, it's weird, but it's fun. Ah, wow. You're guilty, Matt. I'm not talking to you anymore. So yeah. And by the way, okay, raising the level where everyone goes for their tissues. These nicely colored glasses, they're not for show. You have to be really careful when you let the mythos in your life, and it doesn't matter if it's the King in Yellow or Cthulhu or anything else. When I completely lost my eyesight a bit more than 3 years ago, along with the beast's brain thing, the first color I could see was yellow for months. The first, and these are corrective glasses for contrasts. The only color that works for me in any way to even pretend to have contrasts is yellow. There's a spot in everyone's eye that only works where the nerve directly connects to the eye. In German, that's called the yellow spot, and that's the only thing that perfectly works in my eye. Questions? The mythos is dangerous. This is the part we're supposed to giggle. Okay, that was worth a try. Thanks, Gwen.
I knew.
Ah.
Oh my gosh.
All right, and now I want the evil stories about the beast to summon this up, depending on how much time we still have left.
Yeah, I would like to hear some funny stories about Joe.
Mike?
Well, I don't know about funny. It was really fun taking Joe to the beach after the Lovecraft Fest, because the Lovecraft Fest he was on behaving like a kind of a public figure, like he knew people, and he would wait for people to come up and talk to him, and kind of performing a lot, And then after the festival was over, we took him to Lincoln City and stayed there for a couple of days, and he had never been to the Pacific Ocean. So it was a really big deal for him to see the Pacific Ocean, but he also talked all the way there about how he wanted to jump in. He wanted to take off his shoes and run in the water like a kid. And so that part of the trip where we were done with the festival and it was just, I think it was just me and Joe and Lena and my wife. That was when Joe really kind of got to cut loose and be lighthearted and kind of silly. And he really did. I mean, you know, we go to the beach all the time, Lena and I, but we both had not probably taken our shoes off and run into the water, maybe since I was a kid or something, but that's what Joe wanted to do. And so I took my shoes off and went in the water up to the mid thigh or whatever. And it's cold. And he was all, you know, just so excited to have seen the Pacific Ocean for the first time at that age. And then we made the trip a lot about just giving him kind of treats, you know, taking him out to he had certain seafoods he wanted to try. He had listed mentally, had made a list of, I don't know, he wanted shrimp and he wanted clams and he wanted crab cakes and he wanted all these things. So we ended up going to Kylo's, which is this sort of popular restaurant right in the middle of Lincoln City, right on the water. And we just sort of ordered all these different appetizers so we could have some of all these different things. And, you know, I don't remember what he ordered for an entree, but we had like 4 appetizers so we could try oysters. And he was determined that he wasn't going to eat oysters. He was kind of scared to, but Lena and I always get oysters anyway. And he did end up eating 1 oyster. And we just ate so obscenely much food there because we had ordered, in addition to each having a lunch, we'd ordered so many appetizers so that Joe could try, you know, clam chowder and crab cakes and oysters and shrimp and all this stuff. And so I was just about to die by the time we finished our meal. And the waiter came by to bring the check and said, "So anybody want dessert?" And I was just going to say, "No, we don't want dessert. It's lunch. I don't get lunch dessert." Plus, which we just ate enough for 9 people. And Joe was like, "What do you got?" And they had key lime pie, and that got him excited all over again. It was like we had not just run the entire gamut of gluttony and pigged out like freaks. And so they brought him. He was just excited when they you know, he ordered the key lime pie, and then he was just back to being excited and pumped up about they were going to bring us this key lime pie. And we're just like, "Joe, we're not bringing it to us. You're going to eat the key lime pie. I'm not eating anything." So I don't know if that's a funny story exactly, but it's just a little bit of his personality and the way he was. And, you know, whenever Lena and I would go to the beach after that, he would always, you know, if we would post a picture of a place that he would recognize, he would always say, "You got to go by Kylo's and get some of the key lime pie and get some of those oysters again." And, you know, so every time we go there, we were there a few weeks ago, and, you know, it always comes up that trip, you know, with Joe. We've been there a million times because it's the kind of place that we have family groups that go to Lincoln City, and it's often a place that we would go to dinner. But I don't think of that as the place that we went so much with family. As the first thing I think about is that's where we took Joe, and he just lit up like a kid about all these different foods and being scared of the oysters, but then wanting the oysters, and then being chicken and not wanting to do it, but then going ahead and doing it and feeling really excited and proud that he had an oyster, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oysters. Yikes.
Now, if you haven't had the pleasure, I believe they're all available and archived, is when his appearances as a panelist on the Lovecraft e-zine, which he did for years. And I don't have like specific memories. I just remember the pleasure of being like in this kind of virtual group like we are, and it's like we're all very friendly, but just Joe would get the bit in his teeth, and then he would just go about a topic or an author or figurines or a comic book, you know, DC versus Marvel, this particular movie, that particular adaptation. Opinionated. It's okay. He was just really eager to talk about what he loved. I really miss that. If I don't know what I miss the most, that's something I really miss. And you can experience it yourself by going back to the old e-zine podcasts when he was on it.
Absolutely. But the most fun was after the podcast, and we'd all sit around and just bullshit for 20 minutes. And that's when the real stuff came out. I got teased about my hair constantly.
One of the first times we had a conversation over when the first time that we Skyped and started talking about books, he said, well, you don't dish, do you? And I said, what do you mean? And he proceeded to hold forth for about half an hour. Okay. And those were the things that I enjoyed about doing the podcast too, or those the few minutes before the show and the little time after the show. And it was never he knew so many people, and he knew so much about so many people, and he could talk and talk and talk, and it was always fascinating, and he was always passionate, not mean. It wasn't mean spirited. He was just passionate, but he could talk a blue streak, and it was always so much fun.
Yeah.
I had, when he moved in here, I'd been mostly working night shift, usually Wednesdays to Sundays. So I would arrive on Monday morning having no clue what was going on Sundays after closing hours for the easing. And then they took the night shift away, and I would arrive shortly before midnight. And sometimes when you guys were on, you would hear me on the phone for a minute when I announced that I just left work. I was on my way and would be there in a few minutes. And we agreed on, me chiming in, checking if he had cigarettes and tea and whatnot. And I would usually hang out for an hour and then go to bed. And there were literally, out of a month, 2 or 3 times where I'd be up by 5 in the morning, 3 hours after the chat was supposed to be done. And I would be hearing Kelly from the other room, or Rick and Pete, or Mike Davis. And it's like, wait a second, wasn't that supposed to be done 3 hours? Oh, God. Okay. Yes, he would do this for hours. And if you need an idea about a unleashed beast, go to the Lovecraft Easing and look for the episode that was broadcast from Necronomicon in 2015. I didn't know what had happened. Mike might remember this as the, oh my God, it's only Sunday day of the Necronomicon. Remember
I'm
how
not sure I remember what you mean. So 15 was the one you came to 13.
Yeah.
You didn't come to 15?
No, 15 was the one where you guys left a day early, or thought you had to leave it a day early.
Yeah.
And that was for Sunday. And I was sent down to get drinks for everyone before the easing panel. And we ran into each other in the lobby when you guys just returned from the supposed having to leave early.
Yeah.
And we talked for a while, and the store was busier than hell, as it usually was. And it took me about 45 or 60 minutes to get back upstairs. And I heard, drowning laughter already from outside the door, because someone had taken the beast to the side before the panel and had given him a magical cigarette. And he was doped out of his skull this morning. And he had taken, Mike Davis had quipped about, didn't he want to take over because he wasn't feeling too well? And 5 minutes in, Joe just grabs the damn show. And that's what he was like when he was unleashed, pain-free. Like you had met him in Lincoln City. Just watch it. Whenever you feel down, when you're missing the old man, and I do this a lot, look for that episode. It's hilarious, it's beautiful, and he's so excited, his voice almost breaks. The magic of magical cigarettes. And I had no clue. And I walked in there, it's like, what the hell? Oh God, no. Cody! But I think it was someone else who actually had bribed him with that at this point. Happy memories. He would go around and smack all of you in the back of the head for just sitting there and wailing in memories, right?
Well, I remember I
Well,
don't know if
not
it
you,
was
actually.
a film festival or was it Necronomicon? There was a panel, and I had made an online promise that I would provide the booze. I wasn't on the panel, so I think I had gone to the liquor store. I got a fifth of Glenlivet.
So is this the King in Yellow panel that Kelly and
Uh-huh.
Pete Rawlick and ST Joshi
Oh.
and
I don't
I'm
remember.
That
afraid
was
so.
all my booze, so that
okay.
couldn't be this one.
I just sort of took it up there, and it just sort of made its way up and down the panel, which got better as it went.
That was Necronomicon.
Okay.
Because I remember the panel that Kelly talks about, because wasn't it the one where no one had any clue you brought alcohol? And you just arrived and put the bottle down in several glasses, and it's like,
Right.
let's go.
Good times. That was Joe. It's like you don't want to be somber. He live. He was full of passion, and that was his life.
Yeah, and he had stopped drinking several years before, I think almost 20 years back. So every little drop of alcohol worked like, on a virgin brain.
Yeah. It was like with the oysters. He would say, I'm going to have one whiskey this weekend. I haven't had any in a long time, but I'm going to have one.
Who was that? 2013 Necronomicon. I think Cisco. There was a room party, and I remember sitting in the hallway because I was just amazed seeing all the talent. I mean, wife of a writer or not. You meet all these amazingly talented people, and you just have a chance to listen in and have them exchange ideas and stories and whatnot. And I think Joe was talking to Langan, and he had brought his own cup, not because he wanted to get as much alcohol as possible, but just for hygiene reasons. And you get talking and you put your mug down, and all of a sudden there's like 5 things that look the same, and which was mine. So he's standing there, he's talking. And Cisco, who had brought his own bottle of whiskey, every time Joe was busy talking, would refill. And what started as 2 fingers of whiskey easily turned into 5 or 6. And Joe was just taking nips, was talking and drinking. And that very night, and I can say this now because the worst thing that can happen is a mental smack in the back of my head at this point. We're returning back to our room. And he already had trouble navigating the hallways because he wasn't used to alcohol anymore. He also wasn't used to American bedding anymore because we don't do the tucking under thing. We don't have these millions of blankets. We just have a regular blanket that you sleep under. So I would always untuck the blanket just in case, so I wouldn't fall out of bed the next morning because I had forgotten that everything was tucked in. And he had laid down, was instantly asleep, and in the middle of the night I wake up and there's a hellish thump. Cisco had made the old man so drunk he had fallen out of bed.
Oh.
So hard he had pushed the nightstand away.
Oh, man.
And I said, oh shit. My first thoughts, health insurance. He hit his head. Holy crap. I managed to kind of wake him up. It's like, are you all right? And, all right, lay back down. I'll check on you in the morning. Nothing. No headache, no bruise, nothing. Even in rehab, the amount of times he bashed his head almost in, nothing. I don't know what it was with that skull. The outside lasted fine. The inside was kind of crappy at the end, but I'll never forget that. 2013. I had literally just gotten married the day before, if not that very same day. And my honeymoon night ends up with picking my drunkest husband from the floor of a hotel room. All right. I had to promise never to talk about this, but what's he gonna do? Come back? No, that was great. So thank you, Cisco, for providing the alcohol, and thank you, Mike, for introducing him to expensive alcohol. wasn't that almost a tradition? Every time Necronomicon came around and we all gathered hunting down liquor stores.
Yeah, there was that one liquor store called Eno that it was a wine store, but that they had good liquor too, and Joe loved that because he loved Brian Eno, the ambient musician, and the place being called Eno. So he would always pose, outside in front of the Eno sign.
If you're only going to drink once a year, it might as well be expensive liquor.
Yeah.
Especially if you have crazy people around that pay for it. He would always say, you can't decline its expensive whiskey. That's like, you can't say no to that. I got that. I'll pick you up in an hour. You go ahead. Oh, God. No, but really, that's my most fun memories. Conventions, room parties, or just Lincoln Beach. I mean, I know how excited he was when we chatted that night. He said, I was supposed to see whales. There weren't any whales there. So he ended up having Mike take a pic with him in front of a whale.
Yeah, we drove him down to Depot Bay, which is a little town where sometimes you can do whale sighting in the bay there. But there were no whale sightings, but there's a whale statue at the little pull-out place where you can park and look for whales. There's a whale statue, so he wanted to pose in front of the whale statue, although it's obviously not a real whale, it's metal.
But even there, when you look back at that picture, you can see him already all in gestures and talking about 50s. He was supposed to stand in front of the damn thing and take a picture to remember the whole thing. And you can see how he's already talking about anything else. He really, really, really loved that convention and the vacation afterwards. My God. Oysters. He was proud of himself for having done that. No, he was.
Well, I was impressed with how much he was able to eat at that one meal.
Move to Germany for 2 years and miss out on American food, and you'll do the same.
Yeah.
No, it's true. It's very different. He used to refer to Germany as a third world country every time it came to certain foods. And because we have no AC. No, seriously, first thing he bought in Germany was a bloody fan. No.
Okay. We should probably wrap up here soon. Any last words about our friend Joe? I'll start. I have a funny memory of when he was here, when we had Michael Sisko out as a guest as well, and Joe came out, and we arranged an author reading for the two of them upstairs in the upstairs lounge of Sam's Billiards across the street from the theater. And we had a podium for him so that he could put his papers on it and a microphone and everything. But so the microphone is sitting here, and the intent was that the author would, pick it up and put it in front of their face so that people sitting there could hear them, because there's pool being played downstairs, there's waiters and waitresses coming up and down the stairs, there's people moving around, and it's not it's not like a classroom or a hotel ballroom where everyone is there for the same purpose. And so he started reading, but he hadn't picked up the microphone, and I think it was because Joe's used to just projecting, everyone can hear me, it's fine. And at some point I walked up to the podium and I grabbed the mic and I like handed it to him, and he just looked at me like, what is this for? And I said, Joe, you have to put this in front of your face so that people can hear you. And he's like, no. And so I had to stand there and like, he's reading and he was like following him around with the microphone. He finally took it and was like, okay.
Oh yeah. Microphones bite back. He always knew that. Every bloody convention, before we started, it's like, put the mic as close to your mouth as you can. Talk into it. It doesn't bite. He hated microphones. But thank you for doing this.
Well, I don't think there's any value in missing a person. I think that's kind of a negative thing. I concentrate on how blessed I feel having him in my life, that he allowed me to publish him. He was a real supporter when I started Strange Eons, and then allowing me to collaborate with him on one thing, and then just welcome me into the Lovecraft Zine podcast and all of that stuff. He just made me feel at home. Everything I did with him, I really just appreciate him, and I'm very, very happy that he was a part of my life.
Thank you.
I would say he has published like something like 8 or 10 novels and anthologies. A lot are still available through Hippocampus Press. If you didn't know him and you've heard this and you're inspired, there are so many of his books that you can get, and you can also get a sense for what he was passionate about and the way his mind worked thinking about a character. If you can go on the International Speculative Fiction Database, they have like a complete listing of his works. So you don't have to wonder, geez, I wonder what he was like as a writer. You can experience that yourself. So if you want to feel like you've known Joe Pulver, you can read his works. It's all out there for you to see. Just go find it and read it.
Yeah. And there's more coming. I don't know when, I don't know how fast, but I threatened this and I'm keeping my promise. There's a lot of things. I just need to get that eyesight corrected in some way so I can start playing, but there'll be more. And the homepage at some point, when the index is finally done, I'll have more than a few little things to read. Bribes. But yeah, thanks, Matt. That was well said, but that's what I expected from you, Doc. Thank you.
Anyone else have any last thoughts?
I just would say I think about Joe every day, probably, and like Kelly said, I try not to think of it in terms of sadness or missing him, even though sometimes you can't avoid that. But I try to think of it. I try to think of the good memories, and I try to appreciate what he gave us, and just how fun he was to be around, and how much he made everyone better, and made social circles and books and everything better. It was great to know someone like that, and we can all kind of learn lessons from how to be a good part of any group by how he was such a, like I said, a facilitator and enthusiast about so many things.
The sense that I have of being part of a community, of being connected to other people who are interested in speculative fiction, horror fiction, Lovecraftian fiction. That sense, I got that mostly from Joe. I mean, more so than from anybody else that I've known. And as you guys have said, his influence is purely positive. Everything I got from Joe has moved me forward, helped me, encouraged me to take risks and to consider the people that and I'm not a person who reaches out. Okay, I just don't. And Joe made me feel a connection to this community and to the individuals in it. And that's a great thing. I still feel that. And I credit him with making me feel entirely welcome.
Then if it comes to remembering the old guy and doing something that he would appreciate it and carry on the legacy, if you will, just do what he did. Spread the love, spread the passion. If it's music, if it's movies, if it's writing, if you find something that you enjoy that talks to you, talk about it. That's the one thing he always did. And this is how he found you. This is how he kept you. Just, help one another, see what comes back around, and all I know is he must have done a pretty good job, because what came back around to me since late April is staggering still. So if you can talk about what you love, don't be shy. Try new things, approach new people, and just, do what you do best, be creative. And if I know doubt comes, especially for writers, because I read your posts, I know what's going on. Remember how he would have growled at you. That thing that Mike Davis wrote about, this beautiful story about the browser window that I keep referring to in the 2016 Joe Pulver Appreciation Day. Go back to that story and read it, and then be damn sure this is going to happen to you at some point if you don't keep the talent up you have. And as for you, Doc, because I know you're not writing, think about it and continue just talking about the things you love as you so publicly do. We don't all have to be creative. We just have to be open with the things we love. All right, and thus endeth the sermon. Thank you.
Thank you, Kat. That was really nice.
And Gwen, thanks for doing this.
Thank you all for joining us.
Gwen. And Kat.
Thank you.
Oh.
Thank you so much. All
Not
right.
just stuff was nice in the background. SP knows he can go different.
All right, for our audience, we're going to say goodbye. Thank you all for being with us.
Thanks for watching. Take care of the mermaid, Fox. All right. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.